Today we're tackling a big question. Is the pixel art era over? So let's take a balanced look at this. We will discuss the current state of pixel art, its place in the market, and what are some alternative art styles. Pixel art games have long been a cornerstone of the indie scene, with beloved titles like Celeste and Undertale capturing hearts and minds. These games have sold millions and earned a dedicated fan base. These are masterpieces. But when every indie title on Steam is using the same cheap pixel art style, it's no surprise that players are getting tired. The market is oversaturated and standing out is getting tougher. The pixel graphics tag is very common on Steam. For example, games with the hand-draw tag have a median revenue 37% higher than those with the pixel graphics tag. Also, there's almost 3 times more games tagged with pixel graphics than with hand-draw. And finally, 74% of all pixel graphic games makes less than 5k in revenue. Picture this, spending many years working on a game to make $1,000 back. Not great, right? The indie market is overflowing with pixel art games, and the large number of titles can make it difficult for individual titles to get noticed. Nostalgia is a powerful force, but here's the catch. For the new generation of gamers, nostalgia isn't about the NES or the Super Nintendo. I'm sorry to say, but the first PlayStation was released 30 years ago. Unless you are on your 30s or 40s, you grew up with 3D and sharp 2D games. The pixel art that resonates with the emulator audience doesn't necessarily strike the same chord with younger players. For most players 20 years old or younger, pixel art just means low budget. Not necessarily bad, but low budget. The demand for retro experiences is still strong, but the definition of retro is evolving. Think Halo and Kingdom Hearts. There's a whole new landscape of nostalgia to explore, and it goes way beyond pixel art. The good news is that there are tons of alternative art styles to explore. Low poly 3D with low res textures is making a comeback, giving us those sweet PS1 vibes. For instance, Crow Country is a relatively new game that already made over 1 million in revenue. There are also other 2D styles that we can explore. Hand draw, vector graphics. There's also a space to mix 2D and 3D with 2.5D games. This is seen as a retro style nowadays. This style will trigger nostalgia for some PS1 and Nintendo 64 gamers while not being too far from classic pixel art. For example, Star Ocean is a game that comes to mind that mix pixel art with 3D graphics. The folks at Byting Studio, who created Lena's Inception, a classic pixel art game, decided to go with a 2.5D style on their next game, Cassette Beasts. That game was a huge success and appealed to a wider audience than the simple 2D NES pixel art of Lena's Inception. While I love the graphics of Lena's Inception, I have no doubt that Cassette Beasts seems to have a higher production value in the eyes of the players. And I would bet that with what they learn, Byting Studios' next game will not be a pure 2D pixel art game. What do you think? I know what you're thinking. What about insert indie pixel art game here? It was successful. I was wondering the same thing. And while I don't have a perfect answer, here's the pattern that I found. I found mainly 3 groups of games that tend to do well with pixel art. The first group is composed by games with innovative gameplay. They are the first few of their kind or genre and tend to do well even if they're pixel art. Most are games that are older by now, and often new games that follow their steps tend not to achieve the same level of success. For example, there are countless Forager-like games that don't do too well. The second group is AAA pixel art. These games can cost $500,000 to a few millions to make. They have beautiful graphics and heavy marketing. This is the equivalent of AAA games back in the day. For example, Chrono Trigger was a AAA game with a budget of $40 million. And I'm sorry to say, but you will never achieve the same level of pixel art as Chrono Trigger or Sea of Stars if you're working solo or with a small team. In my last video I did some math on how long it would take, so forget about it. And then we have a third group. This group is composed of games that target an older audience. From what I've noticed, this group is composed of games that are spiritual successors to older games. They rely on nostalgia of the classics, or they simply revolve around more mature subjects, including titles like Papers, Please, Not Tonight, and so on. And you might have noticed that most games intersect multiple groups. For example, most of the AAA pixel art also targets an older audience. Some of the AAA games also include innovative gameplay, and so on. So it seems like these groups are not exclusive, and the more your game overlaps in these groups, the better. And look, I'm not saying that this model is flawless, and of course this is not a perfect grouping. However, it can still be an interesting way to assess the choice of an art style. If your game is not innovative, it doesn't feature very detailed pixel art, and it's not targeted towards older folks, pixel art might not be the best idea. And that's our fourth group, which is composed of games in which pixel art may not be the best choice. In this group, pixel art may actually be harmful by decreasing the potential audience, taking more time and money to make, and hurting marketing overall. Let's look at some games in this group. Ever After Falls has art assets and smooth animations that were probably easier to make than traditional pixel art. The game looks great and is a success. Spiritfarer features butter smooth animations achieved using a software called Toon Boom Harmony, which is much better than ASAP for animation. Pixel art would not work well with the number of animations, twins, lerp, and zoom levels. In case you don't know, zooming in and out can be quite challenging with pixel art. Layers Deep is being developed by a team of two. Like Hollow Knight, blurred backgrounds, fog, and interpolation make this game beautiful. And once again, pixel art would increase the challenge with the animations, rotations, blur, zoom, and all. Code of the Lamb, 2.5D characters with many animations and customizations. It is really hard to imagine it having the same level of success as a classic pixel art game. While I like the idea of this game being a flat 2D top-down perspective game, I doubt it would have sold as well if it looked like that. Once again, these are just my observations and this model is not flawless by any means. My goal here was to take you through the steps I took when choosing the art style of my next game. And here's the key takeaway. Will your next game truly benefit from pixel art, or will it just hinder development time, raise costs, and make marketing more difficult? I love pixel art games, but from a game dev perspective, I'm reaching the conclusion that pure 2D pixel art is no longer the best art style for indies and small teams. That's why I'm going with a combination of 3D and non-pixel art 2D for my next game. There's a link in the description in case you want to learn more about my next commercial project. Think of it as Slade Spire meets Stardew Valley, which I know sounds a bit strange. If you think pixel art is still the way to go, drop a comment and let me know your arguments. See you next time.